The Access Innovation webinar with global investors, how to scale your startup on a COVID budget. Actually, we're back in our offices. We're based in Tel Aviv. Our offices are off of lockdown. Today, the restaurants have been open and things are starting to get back to normal. And I hope that all of you as well will soon be out of lockdown. I'd like to welcome our participants today from all over the world. We have more than 35 countries participating, so welcome, and I hope you enjoy our webinar. Access Innovation is an advisory firm based in Tel Aviv. We connect investors and corporations with some of the most exciting technology startups, and we work with some of the world's largest companies, including Ford, Kimberly-Clark, Visa, and a few others. And I'd be happy to talk to you afterwards about what we might be able to do to help you if you're a corporation, investor, or a startup. Before we begin today, I'd like to first of all thank our sponsors, DLA Piper and MobiDev. You'll be having a chance to hear from both of them, and followed by Jason Weiss, COO, who will be moderating. So before we begin, I'd like to introduce my good friend, Naomi Maryles, Business Development Manager at DLA Piper, who will give an introduction to us and welcome participants. Naomi, thanks for joining us today, and hope you enjoy the webinar.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Ed. I'll just take a quick minute to introduce myself. As Ed mentioned, my name is Naomi Maryles. I run business development here in Tel Aviv for DLA Piper, which is one of the largest global law firms in the world. We've had the privilege of sponsoring and participating in numerous Access Innovation events over the last several years, and I consider Ed and Jason and the entire team very good friends, and they've done a tremendous amount for the startup ecosystem, not only here in Israel, but around the world. We've participated in events with them in France and in Russia, and obviously here in Israel, so it really means a lot to us that we continue working together and collaborating together. And just one thing that I would say, I think that the topic today, I've participated in a number of these webinars that Access Innovation has been doing over the last several weeks. And I think that the topic today is obviously, a difficult one, talking to startups about how to deal with limited budgets. Living here in Israel, I have many friends who work in the startup world and obviously a number of clients, and I know how difficult these past several months have been and how difficult, unfortunately, the upcoming months will be as well. So I think it's a really important conversation to have both on the investor side and on the startup side, and just want to thank Ed and Jason for taking the initiative, and thank you again for letting me participate. Enjoy the webinar, everyone.
Thank you, Naomi. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm Jason, as I mentioned, COO at Access Innovation. I'll be moderating the webinar we have today. This is our 6th webinar, and I'm super excited about the topic, which is scaling on a COVID-19 budget, really going into understanding what are the strategies, tips, insights that we can learn from the investors we have on this panel for startups that they've been doing with their portfolio that they would recommend, the advice and the things that they've seen that we think is a really critical topic to understand. All of our webinars that we've had in this series have been focused on startups, on business development, on fundraising, on partnerships, and how to get through and not just survive, but really thrive through this period. And that's what the goal is. We have a really, really exciting group of panelists. I'll let them introduce themselves in a minute. Just want to say a few words now about the format. We are going to have this webinar for 1 hour. We put a lot of effort to making sure it goes smoothly in that way. We'll start with introductions, then a brief presentation by Anna from MobiDev about a topic about remote work and outsourcing, which is very relevant to the entire webinar we have today. Then we'll go to a roundtable for about a half hour, 40 minutes with our panelists with a bunch of questions. We're going to make it go really quick. Then, of course, we have time for questions from you. So it's really important for everyone in the audience. If you have any questions you want to ask, put it in the Q&A chat. If it's something personal just for you and your startup or to one investor, you can send it and we'll try and get to it afterwards. But for the webinar here, if there's something you want to know that's relevant to all the panelists or you think is relevant to all the startups, that's definitely relevant. We always get a ton of questions. Unfortunately, we don't always have time to answer all of them, but we'll get to as many as we can to make it interactive. We also have some really cool polls that are going to pop up every 10 to 15 minutes on your screen with some exciting questions to get your insights, understanding what does the situation look for you, and a few funny questions too. So I'll be ready for that too. It's not only going to be a really insightful and valuable hour for you, whether you're a startup, an investor, or anyone else in the ecosystem, but have a pretty good time. So with that, I would like to introduce our panelists. Let's start with Gal, then Igor and Sever, and then to Anna to say a few words about themselves. So Gal, would you like to start?
Yes, great. First of all, I'd like to thank Ed, Jason, and the Access team for setting up this, I think really timely and really interesting conversation. So thank you for that. My name is Gal Gitter. I'm a managing director at Ibex Investors. Ibex is a U.S. fund, a little bit over 600 million under management, multi-tiered, multi-strategy, and our primary strategy is the private technology sector in Israel, looking at really from seed and all the way to growth stages for startups. We've made 23 investments in the last 9 years or so, 7 exits, mostly invest in enterprise software, but looking at a bunch of topics, and typically very active with our portfolio companies. So we really like to get our hands dirty, to get involved at more than just a board capacity. About myself, so I'm one of our partners located in Tel Aviv. Previous to my time at Ibex, spent 8 years at McKinsey & Company, both advising mostly the financial sector on strategy, corporate finance in the US. And then afterwards, helping lead our McKinsey's Alliances and Acquisitions group, starting to make investments in technology companies and startups and integrating it into McKinsey. So glad to be on this call and looking forward to the discussion.
Igor, you're still muted. There you are.
No.
Now.
No, on my computer I was not mute. Am I mute now or not?
No, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, I'm Igor Ryabenkiy, managing partner of AltaIR Capital. It's a 15 years old investment company. Since 8 years we started to manage investment funds, and now we just closed before COVID, made first closing to our current fund number 3. Starting fund 2, we invest a lot in Israel. Our main focuses are US and Israel, and we have a few investments in other countries. First of all Russian-speaking countries like Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, and so on. We only work with global projects, and main areas of expertise are fintech, productivity tools, direct to consumer, and digital health. Okay, and to mention, it's not industry, but technology, artificial intelligence. As I told, we have 400 million under management so far, and we come on very early stage and up to round A. Made 200 investments so far, and exit counts, so now it's close to 30 exits.
Thank you, Igor. Sever.
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me. I appreciate the invitation and glad to join. I'm Sever Totia, a partner with 3TS Capital Partners. 3TS Capital was founded 19 years ago, originally part of 3i Group, then spun out at its own investment firm. We're a growth capital investor, so that means that we invest in companies between 5 and 15 million in revenue, sometimes a little earlier, but generally at that stage. We're software investors, technology investors. About 70% of our fund is in infrastructure and application software companies, and the remainder is e-commerce platforms and e-commerce tools. We're headquartered in Vienna, Austria, and invest in Europe and in the US. In Europe, we focus on Central Europe, so that means the Germanic region, Nordics, and Eastern Europe. In the US, we're focused on the East Coast mainly. And part of our strategies, we've built this bi-directional bridge where we're investing in European companies and help them enter the US and vice versa. We categorize companies into two groups, what we call local leaders and global challengers. Local leaders are companies that scale in Europe, mainly. Global challengers are companies that scale globally, but most of those enter the US market. We have 330 million under management, and we've invested in 55 companies. 24 are active, the rest have all exited. We've brought 15 companies into the US, so we've got a methodology for how to do this and have seen a lot of successes and learned from mistakes. Of the 15 companies that came into the US market, 8 exited and 7 are active. As I mentioned, we're focused on this stage of company where we're focused on scaling the business. We are active investors as well. We tend to bring, at least 2 to 4 resources into each investment, meaning a partner like myself on a board, but also usually a series of other operators, experienced execs that have built companies 3 to 5 years ahead of where the current startup is, and therefore can help the CEOs scale their businesses.
Thank you very much, Sever. So now I'd like to pass it over to Anna from MobiDev, project manager, team leader, and facilitator, to start us off and say a few words and share a presentation about what they do and remote work and outsourcing, which is a really interesting topic and what we've seen more and more becoming relevant. So Anna, I'll pass it to you.
Yep. Hello, everyone, and thank you for the invitation. And hello, actually, from Ukraine. So I'm project manager, team leader at MobiDev. And today I would like to share with you some my insights in organizing remote work and startups development on a COVID-19 budget. So could you please show the next screen? Yeah, so a few words about myself. I'm representing MobiDev, like software outsourcing IT company, and I'm working as a project manager and more with project delivery. I am also building our company culture and internal processes. And on the next screen, you can see that MobiDev providing full cycle consultancy and development services from ideation and proof of concept to product launch and further on. And the next screen, please. We successfully actually completed over 350 projects in healthcare, automotive, aerospace, energy sectors, and others. And let's jump into the topic particularly. Yep. Nowadays, the term remote is quite controversial, yes, and modern technologies actually blur the boundaries caused by distance and different time zones and open more opportunities for the business. So it becomes a hot topic because as with any approach, there are some issues as well as benefits. And on the next screen, I would like to raise that COVID times bring us some additional fears, such as anxiety, the need to adapt quickly to a new reality. And as a result, we need to be more careful with budgets, like you all know, and be more precise with timelines. So the next screen, I would like to discuss how to deal with those issues. I strongly believe that company culture is a key. We actually switched more than 300 of our employees to remote work within 1 day with no delay in delivering software products to more than 40 of our clients. So work from home, for example, wasn't painless for us. The nature of our work implies a permanent online presence, and moreover, we have 3 development centers in Ukraine, and technically we are always a remote team for our clients. So the only thing that has changed is a workspace. Now, instead of office desks, we see like cozy sofas on the background. Why? The root cause is that we had applied brand strategy beforehand. We established processes and engineer mindset with the focus on productivity and bringing value to our clients. And on the next screen, here is our brand core. So we put an effort in order to create effective workspace where everyone possesses the necessary skills and cooperate with clients efficiently and with mutual pleasure. Everyone relies on service standards and understands clients' business goals and limitations. And our clients are visionaries. Visionaries have a clear perspective and a strong vision of the product. They see problems as opportunities, turning them into new business value. And we aim to understand totally client's world. And on the next screen, I'm leading you to a conclusion that once you have your own values and vision, you could outsource your IT tasks and let outsource team handle the software development routine. It means that you can focus on what really matters, your business and your clients, actually. From my experience views, the only criterion for choosing the right outsourcing partner is that your partner have to share your values and your goals. So according to public studies, you may know outsourcing IT jobs can have cost saving even up to 60%. And I believe that the most essential benefit are flexibility and short time to market. And on the next screen, I'd like especially jump in to the ways that we have developed a special offers. Could you please switch on the next screen? Yep, we have developed a special offers that have been appreciated by startuppers. We have already tried them, especially during trying times. One of them is an MVP light approach. So choosing it, your product can be launched even in 4 weeks. So these short terms and reduced cost became feasible because firstly, we help to prioritize the scope, and secondly, we suggest only those technical options that will implement your ideas faster and in a cost-effective manner. On the next screen, I put some examples that MVP-lite strategy could be applied for websites, mobile apps, for any popular areas, for example, e-commerce, marketing, education, and others. And on the next screen, let's jump into a particular example. With understanding of business needs, we actually have made a right choice for one of our clients. It's a web platform for clothing retail company. So we actually simplified the technical stack, and in the result, we were able to reach the same business goal, however, with a half timeline and with approximately like 58% of savings. And the next one approach on the next slide is in another case. With MVP light approach, you would probably not be able to cover your innovative ideas, which have no similar or reusable existing solutions. So it cannot be simplified. And in this case, you can attract potential investors by some tangible outputs. They could describe your idea and actually prove your business plan. So MobiDev decided to offer even no charge for such outputs during COVID times. So our message is, let's start right away and bring the first result and see how it goes, actually. And next one screen, please. And I will describe an example how we decided to go ahead with one of our new Israel clients just a month ago. When we have made a ROM estimate, we realized, okay, that's approximately $100,000 and it exists owner's budget. Yeah, that's the reality. So we decided to involve UX designer and business analysts. They quickly understood project vision and provided clickable wireframes and functional requirements for major features in this application, and just in 2 weeks. So in 2 weeks, our client is ready for the investment attraction. And I will jump into the conclusion. Yeah, could you please? My main message, let's let yourself be focused on what really matters. Your know-how, your business, your clients. And you can reach that by outsourcing project routine. I do hope that you will find a partner that shares your values and goals and could help you to convert your ideas into successful products. So that's where we are. Thank you for your attention. And please remember that you can go ahead with MVP light approach or no charge approach for the initial delivery and see how it goes. So feel free to ask me any questions at any time. I'm always involved and engaged into the bringing value to the end users. in the most efficient way. Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you very
Thank you
much,
for
Anna,
attention.
for the introduction and the beginning. Let's jump in, guys. Get up our first poll, and let's dive into our first question. For all of you here, you have a lot of experience managing a portfolio. So, what are some key recommendations you are telling your portfolio companies about their budget? And let's go back and start with you, Gab.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, there have been a few things that we've done with our portfolio companies. If you look, first I'll make a general claim that you can't save your way out of a corona or a recession in general. The story for startups cannot just be reducing OPEX, reducing costs in general, and hoping for the best. If you're not growing, you're dying at any stage, this stage in particular, right? So hopefully we tackle that part of the piece as well. In terms of what we've recommended do, first of all, exhaust all government funding and government loans, government grants, especially multinational companies. They have a bunch of options and a bunch of markets that they're operating. That's one. Two, it's pretty standard to do salary cuts across the board. Ranges that I've seen has been between 5 and 25%, sometimes with the ESOP supplementing some of the lost wages for employees. And then third, and this is maybe provocative, but all costs can be reduced, right? The startups need to look at this as essentially negotiating every single vendor agreement they're in. If it's their landlord, if it's whoever, their server costs, whatever it is, right? Just go line by line and have a conversation and try to reduce those. Everything is in bounds now in terms of receptivity to what can be reduced.
Very good points. Those three are really relevant. Igor, do you have any other insights you'd like to add?
Generally, line is similar. Just a few thoughts. First of all, there are projects which may and will grow, and most of our portfolio use it as opportunity. There are though some companies, and between them are companies whom we just invested in May and April, who cannot operate now. Companies which are connected to transportation, to travel, to PropTech, they just cannot grow even if they want. So these companies, we encourage them to be ready to jump when markets will open. For other companies, I would also tell you could not, if you have possibility to grow, you should not take money saving scenario. You should only have aggressive scenario, cut costs, go fundraising, make all necessary changes, and every company has a lot of resources. And we see in practice, we saw during COVID 2 exits. We had substantial, very big rounds for us, like Miro getting 50 million round, then Cheetah 36. 2 days ago was a very funny round. It was a company, American-Israeli company deal, got 14 million from a very early stage, by the way, got 14 million from Anderson Horowitz, and all the deal was closed by online, so they never met. So, I mean, companies should really look for opportunities.
Thank you. And Sever, you're dealing with a little bit later stage, growth stage companies. Are you offering the same advice, or is there something that's different that you're seeing with your portfolio?
Somewhat similar. I'd say we group it into three key points. The first one is preservation of capital. The second one is preparing to be ready. The second one is revenue preservation, and the third one is preparing to return to be ready to when things turn back. So on the first point, fully agree with the comments earlier made by Gal and Igor. I think the other point we usually look at is the when you do the planning, right, the expense reduction planning, after you've done the plan, go another 15% deeper. on the expense side because we just, when things return, we don't know the timing of when things return or how fast they'll return, how long the trough will last. On the revenue side, revenue preservation, and we'll talk about this a little later, Jason. You mentioned you were going to ask a question about this topic, but on the revenue preservation side, we're guiding our management teams to focus really everyone in the company on the existing revenue base and ensuring that clients are ecstatic and happy. Those clients that are in troubled situations with their businesses, making sure that we have all hands on deck in terms of helping them be successful. And then lastly, in terms of preparation for when things return, it's really about laser focus and cutting back things that seem ancillary or things that are, for the projects that would have a payback in 12 to 18 to 24 months, paring all that back and focusing on things that are going to have a return in the next 6 to 9 months.
Okay, thank you. So next question I want to ask is about runway, which is obviously very important. When you're a startup, you need to have that runway. And most investors are really talking about this 12 to 18 months runway. And so first of all, if you agree with that, startups should have that or they should plan for longer. And secondly, should startups really only focus on survival, really getting through this period? Or when does a company focus on growth and knowing when they should really put on the gas? And I'll pass it to Igor because you had talked about this perhaps to start your answer for this one.
I believe that pulling, getting full gas is a right strategy. And we see that even our companies, some companies which are fully funded in good growth, they manage to improve their strategy and to change, to increase pace of growth. Companies using different ways. They take market share from competitors. They develop a new offering. Some companies already started negotiations in taking over of less stable competitors and so on. So I'm totally sure that strong companies will get out of all this crisis even more stronger.
And I didn't hear in the beginning, do you also recommend having that 12 to 18 month runway, or do you think it needs to be longer?
I believe that today we check we do stress test to all our portfolio and we do stress test for our new investments. And we recommend to have money until end of 21.
Okay, right. Sever, your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, 12 to 18 months is right. Our companies are larger on average in terms of revenue, and so I think they tend more towards 12 months rather than 18 months. But I think the other important point here is that survival is, half the equation, because if you survive but then don't have enough capital to restart, to rebuild growth by having resources for marketing and sales, it's really tough. And it goes back to the reality of having to cut expenses maybe a little deeper in order to retain some of the resources, not only to survive, but also to have enough to then reinvest in sales and marketing when the whatever vertical you're in, opens back up. At the same time, in a way, this shutdown will separate the strongest companies from the weakest companies, in the sense that, even in sectors that are troubled, the stronger companies can take market share faster at this point, again, by having resources. So it's not just about survival. It's about accelerating for some businesses as their competitors are on the sidelines.
So how does a company know when is the time to focus on, hit that gas, focus on that growth versus to manage? Is there a certain point, when they understand how much market share they have, or is it based on customer feedback?
It's largely, what we see across the companies we've got is it's really based on customer feedback. And it's this very, very close relationship with clients and talking to clients on a daily basis and listening to the cues and listening to the cues for demand pull, what I'll call demand pull. Even in troubled sectors, we see demand pull for certain types of clients. We have a company, for example, in recruiting. Okay, recruiting software. How could a recruiting software be growing? Well, it's growing in the Tech 100 rapidly, right? It's not growing in airlines, but in Tech 100, it's growing hand over fist. So by refocusing the sales team into the Tech 100 and frankly the next 500 in tech, they're able to grow.
Great. Gal, anything you'd like to add?
No, I mean, let me just add another point to the, I really agree with the points that Sever just made. I think if you think about what's changing in the world now, and this is especially from the enterprise angle, right? So there's kind of 3 points that we try focusing our company, and not all companies can do this, but the companies that can, I think, are well served and can actually grow in this situation, right? First, if you think about this from the enterprise angle, they want to focus, the enterprise are trying to save money as well. So they're only going to spend money on what they deem critical. That's one. Second is they're going to try saving costs, right? And third, they're not going to take any wild risks or adventures now. They want something that shows definite impact, right? So the opposite point of that, if you can make your value proposition, if you can attack up market, replace higher priced competitors. Second, revise your pitch and show not just how it enables to create impact, but how it enables to reduce actual OpEx. And third, try to put yourself in a position that you're deemed as critical as possible. You can actually use the situation to grow versus to stagnate, right? But this needs to be done thoughtfully.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to our next poll for right now. And then I want to go to our next question. So this is something that, Sever, you had touched on, and you wrote a great post, I think, on 3TS, which is about revenue and how to really retain that revenue. Where does it come from? How much is going to be going back to those existing customers? How do you know what to go back to? How do you know if you should maybe pivot? You gave an example of going into, from that Tech 100 to from another area. So if you could elaborate on some of those points you mentioned there, I think it's really interesting. And then for Gal and Igor to really talk about this point about this revenue recognition, not just cutting expenses, but how do you maintain the existing revenue that you have?
Yeah, sure. So the main point is that, look, I mean, the first line of defense for any software company, especially in SaaS, is your existing revenue base, however small that is, however small or large, right? And it's an obvious point, but it sometimes gets lost in the sort of craziness of the everyday battle that building companies takes. The majority of our companies began basically a customer canvas March 1st, I would say, by making sure they talk to all of their customers. The enterprise ones, or the ones that sell to large customers, obviously have an easier time at it. But we have companies that have 300, 400, 500 customers that talk to everybody. And the ones that have more customers than that, in the thousands, you surveys, you prioritized, et cetera, but they got to a majority of their client base as well. And that outreach alone made a big impact, because it was at a time of crisis where a vendor was reaching out to their client saying, hey, we're here for you. Well, how can we help? We know we can deliver ROI. We're going to double down, make sure that the ROI that we deliver to you is delivered even despite this period of time. If you need payment concessions, we can work with that. If you are thinking about churning, don't churn. How can we help you stick through? There's a long list of tactics, which is probably, we don't have time for that today. There's a long list of tactics for how to approach the customer base to ensure that you've got, you can retain. The tactics are also grouped by category of customer. You have the green customers, the yellow customers, the red customers. And what you're doing for green, yellow, and red is different. The way you align your resources into the green customers and the yellow customers is different than what you'll align to the red customers, right? But this whole company focus onto the customer base plays a very critical role. I mean, we saw it in 2008 and 9. We saw it in 2000, 2001, right? Some of these things aren't, what's that old saying? History doesn't repeat itself; it echoes. I think there's some lessons learned from the past that apply today, and this is one of those.
Thank you so much, Sever and Gal, and then Igor. Do you have any points on what you've been doing with your companies in terms of maintaining that revenue or even trying to grow that revenue?
I mean, one thing that one of my companies did that I thought was clever, and this is similar to the green, yellow, red, customer that Sever was mentioning, right? So do an assessment of the risk of your current revenue to churn, and oftentimes just go into that and have a conversation and ask your company. Think of them much more as a partner than as a client. Say, how are you doing? And really try to understand where they're coming from. And don't try to even talk about their relationship. Afterwards, the ones that you deem are in the red category, what they've done that I think is clever and will pay for itself is they've gone to the companies that they saw the high churn risk, and they preempted that conversation by saying, hey, I know you're struggling. I see you as a partner going forward. Let me help you. Let me cut down. Let me cut down our price by 25%. Plus, I'll extend it for 3 months for free. And renew your contract now, and it's going to be 25% cheaper or whatever that was. Instead of waiting for the company to come to them and ask for a discount, right? So that does a couple of things. One, it locks them in, and then second, it shows a lot of goodwill for a client that would have otherwise, likely had churned or had gone to get, a much deeper discount. So I thought that was, just a clever piece and something that will build a relationship going forward.
Great insight. I think that's a great story, and I think it was a great
Regarding my portfolio, we don't have so many companies in enterprise. In reality, we have very few. Most companies which are working with enterprise clients are in productivity tools. And in productivity tools, nobody speaks today about cutting because everybody needs them. So they just grow, that's all. We have opposite. We adjust our plans for growth, getting out of the spike because we consider that it will not go up forever. Similar things going on in consumer, in direct-to-consumer products, in consumer subscription applications, and so on. Also, a lot more people who were not online come online, so we also have spikes in growth. Where is necessary to do something when our companies, for example, in media, who work with large partners, it's more partners than clients because it's mainly like revenue share models and so on. So in all these cases, there are certainly measures to support these partners by all what colleagues told, to get like to pay in advance when you can pay in advance. If you should get money, to let be paid later, and so on. By the way, it also comes to consumer because say our companies who work on consumer market, they understand that today also give consumer preferred payment terms also helps because people also struggle. So some companies started to introduce, which was not before. Before it was like pay on spot. Now it is buy now, pay later. Subscribe now, pay later. It is widespread.
Good. Thank you, everybody. My next question is about launching a new product or service for a startup. How should a company decide whether it's a good or bad time to launch a new product or service? If they had it in their pipeline, should they wait? Should they do it now? How would you advise a company to evaluate that? And I also want to bring Anna in on this question because I think it's also relevant for your work at MobiDev. So Anna, if you'd like to go first.
Yeah, sure. That's exactly the question connected with development and launch. Yeah, and we are actually pretty sure that pandemic wouldn't last forever. Yeah, so our suggestion is always you have to act in order to be ahead. And if you want, for example, solid market validation, obtaining of proof of concept or MVP light strategy, yeah, is probably like the best way, the best thing you can do. So even if you don't have the polished, cool product, yep, you can make a proof of concept. However, right here and right now, and the result of this proof of concept will tell you whether it's a good or bad time to grow and to put more effort into your startup idea. Yeah. So there are like lots of debates about whether being first to market is better than being the best, for example. Yeah. And as I see, like if you don't build precisely enough for the right customer and the right time, neither first or nor best is very meaningful. And by the right time, I mean when it's needed for the end users, for your target audience. Yep. So for instance, like one of our clients, even in the restaurant industry, yep, it's one painful industry for the COVID time. Yeah, he has launched 2 new sub-projects during these trying times in order to expand market coverage and simplify the life of his users, yeah, during this period. And it was clear that that's the right time. And without much doubt, with not much polishing, because it was aimed to meet the needs of the end users and resolve their issues, problems during this period of time. Yep. So overall, my suggestion is go ahead with proof of concept, with something that is valuable for the end users right now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Gentlemen, any other insights to this question? Okay, we'll go on for the sake of time. I want to get to 2 more questions related to fundraising before we open it up to the audience. So some companies, let's say if in your portfolio, need to raise additional capital now, do you recommend or have you been recommending that they do an internal round and you're reserving capital for them, or go out and raise a round from external investors? How do you look at that with your existing portfolio? Then my next question will be related to new investments. So Sever, would you like to start? How do you look at your own portfolio and you need to raise capital, internal round versus going and looking at bringing on new investors?
Yeah, sure. You know, it really depends on the growth profile. So obviously there's a subset of companies in these times that are growing quite rapidly or are able to either sustain the growth rate they had in 2019 and prior years or accelerate. So obviously in our minds, so our portfolio, for example, has grown 40% year over year on average through 2019, right? Well, it remains to be seen what happens in 2020 exactly, but that's the bright line for companies that are growing 40% and faster. Again, in our portfolio, go ahead and fundraise. For the ones that are impacted and slowing down or have slowed down, we're advocating more internal rounds, right? But I think growth is the key point because you can attract external investors, new investors, especially at a time like now. All investors are focused on are triaging, right? They're all focused on their existing portfolio companies to more than normal, and so the bar for new investments is very, very high, and so the performance of the business has to be quite strong in order to attract new outside investors.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, let me maybe add to that, right? So I think if you're growing, right, 40-50%, right, you know, you basically continue as usual. You may have a more difficult negotiation on terms, but other than that, you know, you'll probably find capital. If you're not growing at 40-50%, if you've plateaued a little bit, you know, I think the way I would think about it is really in stages, right? One, try to get all available government money, you know, government grants, institutional, you know, whatever you can. In Israel, it's the scientist office. In other countries, there's different grant. You know, you need to become experts at that, right? So that's one, right? Second, you reduce your burn rate as much as possible. right? Third is you try to get debt from your investors, from from a specialized lender, anything you can do to not have to dilute yourself too much, right? If the next stage after that, you'll try doing an internal round. The next stage after that, I think you go to outside investors and you try to do an unpriced round, like a safe or a convertible debt or whatever you can to not have a priced round that will, either be a down round or whatever that is. And then if you
Gab? I lost you. Okay, I think we lost the internet second for Gab. Igor, do you have any other comments you'd like to make?
Let me continue. Let me continue from here. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I mean, for companies today, even they grow well and they're well funded, we tell if you don't have like enough money until end 2021, go rise. Better sit on some extra cash because nobody knows if during next time it will be more difficult to raise funds. Second, if company growing and bringing good marketing message and is not funded well, companies go to market and they manage to fund themselves. As for companies who need money, but they are in really not very attractive position for market. For example, their growth is not enough, or they are on plateau because they just developed new functionalities, they cannot show growth. In this case, we tell really concentrate on cutting cost because nobody judge your growth now, and concentrate on the relationship with your market. Also, we tell don't do any new features, forget about it, forget about everything except your core message, your core product, because you only will be judged on it. And also, we do a lot of early stage and companies which come like pre-sales, pre-seed and early seed. Relatively easy can raise funds today because everybody understands that when they go to market, it will be already post-pandemic. So here ourselves, we look more at what perspective of this product. And so I see also do as investors. And generally, I would tell even time become tougher, but the good products still have big competition among investors to be.
Thank you. So now I want to follow on the fundraising train of thought, go to a question we got from one of our members. This is from Samin from Canada. And I think this is a great question. Should startups, and we're referring obviously here to early stage startups, focus on staying self-funded for as long as possible, especially in the COVID-19 world we are in? Who wants to take a stab at that?
Okay, as an early stage, I would answer. If you have possibility to go on your own, like bootstrap, as long as you can, it is a good tactics. Unless you really see possibility to very high growth, then it worth to take funds and use it really to jump. If you just develop, you grow steady and prepare for next stage, stay on bootstrap as long as you can.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's always during COVID or not COVID. If you can go on your own and feel like you're growing and proving your thesis well, it's better. And then, but if you see demand pull, as I said, I mentioned earlier, to underscore Igor's point, if you see a demand pull in your market, this is a great time to accelerate forward beyond the competition. There's also another quick point I wanted to make related to this, which is, if you think about the incumbents, right? Whatever incumbent competition you might have from your in your market, everybody's on lockdown. So all of a sudden your competitors are, so the incumbents in your market are locked down, whether they're grocery stores or retail, everything that's brick and mortar offline is in lockdown. So if you're competing against companies that are in lockdown, this is a great time to be able to just pass them right by. You couldn't find a better kind of competitive dynamic than when your competitors are in lockdown.
Yes, that's an interesting point. Very, very true. Gal, you're back. Great. Any other points you'd like to say about how long a startup should be self-funded, when they should go for their first round in a time like this?
No, I mean, nothing to add a lot beyond what my colleagues just mentioned. I think this is basically an equation on what are you sacrificing by staying self-funded? What growth are you sacrificing right now? Do you know what acquisition cost is, for example? Right? Like, you're probably not going to hire a big direct sales force right now, but how much growth are you sacrificing by not taking external capital, right? If you can answer that question and have a reasonable answer to that, then I wouldn't take external capital. But I think that question needs to be asked. It's not about, situations like this are not about conserving and then hoping for the best in the future. Because if you don't spend on growth, then you're not going to be a successful company. Right, in the venture world, right? Maybe a great small business, but not in the venture world, right? So as long as it's not an impediment to how you see the trajectory of your company going forward, I would stay self-funded.
Great points, everyone. Next question is from Venkat from India. Can you give some pragmatic tips on how to make a startup more investable? And you guys have really touched on this, but maybe I will add, if a company is not a SaaS company where they can really see growth metrics, if they're maybe hardware, or maybe they're in R&D, or they're in deep tech and they're not seeing that revenue yet, is there anything else you would say on how to make them be more investable when they're not going to be able to show in the near few months any revenue growth? Any takers?
Yeah, I'll jump into that one. I mean, I think, as I mentioned earlier, we're later stage investors for the most part. But I mean, look, at the end of the day, first 10 customers, the next 10 customers, and the next 10 customers after that, right? I think those are the earlier stage side. That's really the point. And the question is, can you can a startup at the early stages go get those first 10 customers and 10 proof points that align with the ROI and the value proposition that their go-to-market strategy says they have. And even in these tough times, you should be able to go find those kinds of customers. Of course, it's vertically, it depends by industry, but for the most part, the market's big enough, and your value proposition as a startup better be strong enough that you can go find the 10 customers, the 10 first customers.
I can add that we see today by many startups who just start and who go straight and who pivoted. All of them, most of them find possibility to get new customers. Many of them who look for opportunities, they see that, okay, they have decreased in one sector, so they switch to other sector. Just okay. Generally, if you have sound proposition in your startup, so people are interested in it, so you will find your customers.
Focus right on the value proposition, of course. Make it. So another question. We'll see how many more we can get to. This is from Yoav from Israel. In terms of scale, can you offer any insights or tips on how to facilitate marketing or growth hacking efforts on a really minimal budget? So essentially, any tips, strategies for how to really do the marketing in the times like this?
Okay.
Igor.
Look, depends very much on what market, what kind of product, what market do you have. Say, if you are in B2B or B2G, probably you can go without marketing, just rely on business development, try to start with cold calls and get to your target customers. If you are in B2C and try to go to mass market, go mostly you can try to get some viral component in your product, so people will be interested and intrigued and try to introduce it to each other. Then you have all this, you have voice of mouth, and best of the best, if you manage to find some influencers with large group of users, which can be also intrigued by your product and can recommend it. It is the best. I can give you example. Like a few years ago, it was early stage startup from Belarus, Masquerade, and somehow DiCaprio used their masks in Oscar ceremony, and 1 week later, Zuckerberg already bought them. So if you can, and they didn't have 1 penny in sales. So okay, be creative.
Be creative. I think that's a great idea for this. Let's go to one, maybe two, but probably just one more question. Wrap it to all of you guys. This is from Nikita in the UK. Would you consider investing in a travel tech startup or any industry that is in question now? Let's say if the valuations drop because you're looking 2-3 years down the road. What do you think about these industries where their growth isn't so good now, but do you look at the future 2-3 years, or you just look at, okay, right now they're down, we have to wait? Quickly from each of you, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, we're investing, over 5 to 7 year horizons. So no sector is out of question, even in this time, right? Because the trend lines are or at least the trends that we focus in on are long term, and so we're not turning anything off, frankly. And again, history speaks volumes. Some of the best investments in fintech were made in 2008, 9, 10.
Right.
So I don't think in some respects it's the opposite, where we're hunting in some of the sectors that are hardest hit to find those companies that are continue to grow, right? If you can find a grower in a vertical that's hit pretty hard right now, that's a very special company.
Jason, and I'd add 2 points, right? If you look at something like travel, right? One is we would invest, we would look at it, probably at a more aggressive price to compensate for the risk. And second, we would need to have a strong thesis from the company on how or why they will be able to succeed in this changing landscape. I mean, travel companies are under duress. They're going to spend less. So, why or how will they be able to penetrate this market and be able to grow in this market, right? If we hear a reasonable response, even if it doesn't have traction yet, right, we'll have that conversation.
Great.
Okay. I would tell that we're not charity. We practically invested in industries which are hit today because really we find that there is opportunity. And certainly in these industries, startups don't do nothing now. They just prepare to do when pandemic situation will ease. But despite we did it, we still prefer to concentrate on projects which have more clear trajectory of growth. And it's plenty you can find now. So unless it's very strong team with very clear proposition, which will come after market comeback, we will pass. If we have opposite, we have really startups which don't do nothing today, but we understand that however situation will change, this team will manage and manage good. We give check now.
Thank you, Igor. All comes down to value proposition at the end of the day and what you provide your customers. Thank you so much. We're wrapping up our webinar. Thank you, Igor, Sever, Gal, for your insights. Thank you, Anna, for the really insightful presentation and for your work here. To DLA Piper, our other sponsor on this webinar, to the entire Access team. A big thank you to Riley, who will be finishing his internship with us and done a lot of great work to help really organize and run these webinars. Thank you to everyone for joining us. and for your questions and engagement. We're going to keep these webinars going. Stay tuned for the next one coming up. It'll be in about 2 weeks. We're really excited to see where this can go. We're all learning a lot, and our goal is to provide as much value as we can to our ecosystem of startups, investors, and corporations. So thank you so much again to everyone for joining us, our panelists, the Access team, and our sponsors. Have a great day. We hope everything will continue looking up for everyone, and we look forward to seeing you next time on our next webinar. Bye.
Thanks all.